My son begged me to save him, saying, "I don't feel safe here." Then his mom's boyfriend yelled at him, and I knew I had to fight for full custody. I'll never forget how it all started. It was the look on my son's face that set everything in motion. I'm a 41-year-old dad with a 12-year-old son. My ex-wife and I divorced 5 years ago, and while it wasn't easy, we managed to keep things relatively civil for our son's sake. I paid my child support and alimony, and he lived with her in the home we used to share, a modest 3-bedroom house. Things seemed stable enough, or so I thought. Not long after the divorce, my ex took in her nephew, her sister's son. He's 10 now, a couple of years younger than my son. I didn't have an issue with it at the time. I figured it was a kind thing to do, and my son never seemed to mind sharing his space. That all changed about 2 years ago when my ex started dating someone new. Things moved fast. Before I knew it, her boyfriend had moved into the house, and not long after, she found out she was pregnant. That's when the real upheaval began. Her boyfriend brought his daughter from a previous relationship into the mix, and suddenly, there wasn't enough space for everyone. They decided to give his daughter her own room. And just like that, my son and his cousin were crammed into one room, sharing a space that had once been his alone. My son was hurt, confused, and frustrated. He felt like he'd been pushed aside in his own home. When he came to me about it, he was visibly upset. He asked if he could live with me full-time. He's never done that before, never even hinted at wanting to switch households. It broke my heart to see him so unhappy, and I knew I had to take action. I contacted my lawyer immediately. I'd always wanted full custody but didn't want to force anything on my son unless it was what he wanted. This time, it was clear. He wanted out. While discussing custody, my lawyer mentioned something else. Since my ex was now living with her boyfriend, I was legally entitled to terminate the alimony I'd been paying. My old lawyer had said it would only apply if she remarried, but apparently, in our state, cohabitation counts. I won't lie, I jumped on that opportunity. The extra money could be better used for my son's future. I told my lawyer to move forward with both the custody case and terminating alimony. The court ruled in my favor on the alimony, but custody is still being processed and likely won't be settled until after the holidays. As you can imagine, my ex was livid. She's only working part-time, and her boyfriend, while well-meaning, is a medically retired firefighter with limited income. They're struggling financially now, but I can't pretend I feel bad about it. My son comes first, always, and I want to save every penny I can for him. Now, though, I'm left wondering, am I the bad guy here? My ex accuses me of being petty, of making things harder for her family. But in my mind, my loyalty is to my son. He deserves to feel safe and prioritized. What do you think? Did I do the right thing, or should I have handled this differently? Update 1. The custody process is turning out to be far more complicated than I anticipated. I thought my son wanting to live with me full-time would make things straightforward, but it seems my ex is digging in her heels. She's furious about losing alimony, but instead of focusing on resolving custody, she's made it her mission to paint me as the bad guy. The court process is dragging on, and I'm learning more about what's really happening in my son's life during our visits. My son told me that after her boyfriend moved in, things started to change at home, and not for the better. His cousin, who used to get along with him just fine, has started lashing out. It's nothing extreme, just snarky comments or moments of tension, but when you're 12 and already feeling displaced, it adds up. The cousin seems upset about having to share a room too, so now they're both stuck in a space that feels too small for either of them. What really got to me, though, is that my son mentioned his mom's boyfriend doesn't treat him the same as his daughter. He said when her boyfriend is around, he focuses entirely on his own kid and barely interacts with my son or his cousin. And when he does interact, it's short and cold, like he's just tolerating them. My son is pretty perceptive for his age, so I don't doubt he's picking up on real tension. He said it makes him feel like an outsider in his own home. Then there's his mom. Apparently, she's overwhelmed trying to juggle everything. She's working part-time, managing the house, and now pregnant on top of it all. My son said she's been snapping at everyone. It doesn't seem like there's much patience or understanding going around, and the stress is making the environment even harder for him. He doesn't feel like he can talk to her about how upset he is because he's afraid it will make things worse. The kicker came when he told me about a recent argument between his mom and her boyfriend. He overheard them fighting about money, with her blaming him for not contributing enough, and him saying he's already doing all he can. My son said his mom started crying, which freaked him out, but he didn't know what to do. He just stayed in his room until it was over. Hearing all of this solidified my resolve. My son deserves to feel safe and supported, and it's clear that isn't happening right now. I wish I could just take him out of that situation immediately, but the custody process doesn't work that way. Until the court rules, I have to stick to the existing agreement, which means he's spending most of his time in an environment that's clearly not healthy for him. I talked to my lawyer about everything my son told me. He said the court will consider the child's wishes and overall well-being, but they'll also weigh factors like the stability of both households, financial situations, and parental involvement. He advised me to document everything and focus on showing the court that I can provide a more stable, supportive environment. So that's what I'm doing. In the meantime, I'm doing everything I can to support my son when he's with me. We've had some really good conversations about what's going on and how he's feeling. I'm trying to be there for him in a way that doesn't put him in the middle of the custody battle. It's a fine line to walk because I don't want to undermine his mom or make him feel like he has to choose sides, but I also want him to know that his feelings matter and that I'm here for him. I also reached out to a therapist for advice on how to best support him through this transition. I haven't mentioned therapy to my son yet because I don't want to overwhelm him, but if things don't improve, I think it could really help him process everything. The therapist suggested creating a sense of stability and routine when he's with me, so I've been focusing on that. We've started some small traditions, like cooking dinner together or playing a board game before bed, and it seems to be helping. Despite all of this, my ex is still furious about the alimony. She's accused me of only terminating it to punish her, which isn't true. Yes, the extra money helps, but my main concern is making sure my son has what he needs. I've already started setting aside the money I would have spent on alimony into a savings account for him. I plan to use it for his future, whether it's college, a car, or something else he might need. But trying to explain that to her is pointless. She's so focused on what she's lost that she can't see the bigger picture. Her boyfriend isn't helping matters. According to my son, he's been making comments about how I should step up and help out more financially, even though I'm already paying child support and covering additional expenses for my son. It's frustrating because I feel like I'm being vilified for prioritizing my child's well-being over their financial comfort. But at the end of the day, I know I'm doing the right thing for my son, and that's what matters. The holidays are coming up, and I've already talked to my ex about splitting time with our son. She wasn't thrilled about it, but we agreed he'd spend Christmas Eve and morning with her and Christmas afternoon and the following weekend with me. I could tell she wasn't happy about giving up any time, but at least we managed to come to an agreement without involving lawyers this time. I'm hoping the holidays will give my son a bit of a break from the tension at his mom's house. I've planned a few special activities for when he's with me, like baking cookies, watching his favorite holiday movies, and going ice skating. He seemed really excited when I told him about it, and it felt good to see him smile after everything he's been going through. The custody hearing is set for January, and I'm cautiously optimistic. I know the court process is unpredictable, but I'm hoping they'll see how much my son wants to live with me and how much better his life could be here. In the meantime, I'm just trying to stay focused on what I can control and make the most of the time I have with him. Update 2. The custody hearing is fast approaching, and the tension is reaching a boiling point. My son has been telling me more about what's happening at his mom's house, and honestly, it's worse than I thought. I knew there were financial struggles and general stress, but now it seems like the entire dynamic is falling apart. My ex's boyfriend has apparently started spending less and less time at home. According to my son, he's out late several nights a week, and when he is home, he mostly stays in his room with his daughter. This leaves my ex to deal with everything else, managing the house, the kids, her job, and her pregnancy. She's constantly on edge, and my son says it's getting harder to talk to her about anything without it turning into an argument. What really struck me was when my son said he feels like an invisible kid at her house. He said that no one really talks to him unless it's to tell him to do something. He's been withdrawing more, spending time in his room or trying to keep busy with schoolwork or his tablet. Hearing that broke my heart. I don't want my son to feel like a burden in his own home. Meanwhile, the tension between him and his cousin has also escalated. What started as minor disagreements has turned into full-on arguments. My son told me his cousin has started blaming him for causing trouble with the adults, saying things like, "They're always fighting because of you." I know his cousin is just a kid too, and probably doesn't fully understand what's going on, but those words have been weighing on my son. Then there was the incident with the boyfriend. My son mentioned that he accidentally spilled a glass of water on the table during dinner one night. His mom was busy, so her boyfriend stepped in and yelled at him, calling him careless and telling him to grow up. My son said it was the first time the boyfriend had raised his voice at him, and it left him feeling scared and embarrassed. He said his mom didn't even notice because she was in the kitchen dealing with the baby's things. I brought this up with my lawyer, and he's added it to the growing list of concerns we'll bring to court. The lawyer also suggested asking the court to appoint a guardian ad litem, GAL, to advocate for my son's best interests. I think that's a great idea because it means someone neutral will be looking out for him and assessing the situation from both sides. On my end, I've been doing everything I can to make my home feel like a safe haven for him. We've kept up with our little traditions, like making dinner together and playing board games, and I've noticed a real change in his mood when he's here. He's more relaxed, more talkative, and just generally happier. He even opened up to me about something he's been struggling with. The idea that he might hurt his mom's feelings by wanting to live with me full time. He said he doesn't want her to think he doesn't love her, but he also knows he feels happier and safer with me. I told him that his feelings are valid and that he's not responsible for managing his mom's emotions. It's a tough concept for a 12-year-old to grasp, but I could see a little relief in his face when I said it. The holidays were a mixed bag. Christmas Eve at his mom's house didn't go well. He said there was a huge argument between her and the boyfriend about money, and it made him want to lock himself in his room. By the time I picked him up on Christmas afternoon, he looked exhausted. We spent the rest of the day baking cookies and watching his favorite holiday movies. He even mentioned how different it felt at my house, how quiet and calm it was. That comment hit me hard. I realized just how much stress he's been carrying and how much he needs stability right now. After Christmas, things took another turn. My ex called me, furious about the fact that I'm pursuing full custody. She accused me of trying to steal our son and said I'm being selfish for putting him through this. I stayed calm and told her that I'm doing this because I believe it's what's best for him, not because I'm trying to hurt her. She didn't want to hear it. She's convinced I'm out to punish her, and nothing I say seems to change her mind. Her financial situation has also gotten worse. She admitted that her boyfriend's contributions have been minimal, and she's been struggling to keep up with expenses on her part-time income. She even hinted at asking me for additional financial help outside of child support, but I reminded her that my priority is saving for our son's future. That didn't go over well. Now, she's trying to convince our son that staying with her is better for the family. She told him that if he leaves, it will tear the family apart. I was furious when he told me this. It's so unfair to put that kind of pressure on a 12-year-old, making him feel like his decisions could ruin everything. I reassured him that none of this is his fault, and that adults are responsible for figuring these things out, not him. The custody hearing is in a few weeks, and I feel like everything is riding on it. My lawyer says we have a strong case, especially with my son's expressed wishes and the documented concerns about his current living situation. But I know custody battles can be unpredictable, and it's hard not to feel anxious about the outcome. In the meantime, I'm focusing on what I can control. I've been in touch with his school to make sure they're aware of what's going on and to ensure he has support there if he needs it. I've also started researching extracurricular activities he might enjoy, like a robotics club or a local soccer team, so he'll have things to look forward to once he's here full-time, hopefully. Every step of this process has been emotionally draining, but I keep reminding myself that it's worth it. My son deserves to feel safe, supported, and loved, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that happens.